He was Rome's golden general, Pompey the Great, victor of the East, hero of the Republic, and once the most powerful man alive. Senators rose when he entered. Crowds chanted his name. But then came Caesar, younger, sharper, patient. First an ally, then a rival. What followed was a slow unravelling of trust, of friendship, of Rome itself. Backroom deals turned to open war. Pompey, once the guardian of the Republic, fled before his former allies' marching legions. This is the story of pride politics and the brutal rivalry that shattered the Roman world. Pompey fought to save the old order, but history only remembered the man who buried it. Settle in as we unravel the tale of Pompey the Great, a young man whose climb to power mirrors the wild chaos of the Roman Republic at its most volatile. In the dying days of the 2nd century BCE, the once unshakable republic lay fractured, its towns tormented by civil war and treachery. In this tumultuous world, a teenage Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, not of noble blood but ambitious beyond measure, stepped into the fray, ready to carve out a legacy with the sword rather than words. The scent of smoke lingered over a shattered landscape as Pompey made his entrance, not as an eloquent senator, but as a charismatic leader, commanding legions with a fire rarely seen in one so young. The cries of battle were his symphony, and the restless marching boots spoke louder than rhetoric. The Roman elite, steeped in tradition, watched uneasily as this outsider proved that raw magnetism could eclipse birthright. Pompey's meteoric rise shifted power dynamics, stoking fears in the Senate's shadowy corridors, where ambition often clashed with caution. Pompey's journey began at a young age, baptized not in politics' subtle art, but in the crucible of war. His father, Pompeius Strabo, left behind more than an inheritance. He left a legacy marred by betrayal. Yet young Pompey moulded this burden into a strength. Unlike his father's fickle loyalties, Pompey cultivated unwavering devotion from his men. He wielded his personal army not as a mere tool of power, but as loyal comrades in Sulla's service, showcasing a precocious tactical mind that unnerved his older peers. At the tender age of 23, others may have viewed him as a mere boy, yet Pompey had the spirit of a seasoned tactician. Supported by veterans and driven by his formidable charisma, he embarked on a series of campaigns that became legendary. Rome murmured of the teenager's ruthless efficiency. Stories of his decisive justice whispered with an uneasy respect in the capital's narrow alleys. The Senate christened him the Young Butcher, a nickname that captured both the admiration and dread his calculated savagery inspired. Pompey's moniker didn't merely recognise his capacity for bloodshed, but also a strategic brilliance unanticipated from someone so youthful. His victories, coupled with stories of unyielding resolve, propelled him into Roman politics, where his lack of experience was eclipsed by his battlefield triumphs. In a republic governed by intrigue and treachery, Pompey's mastery in war was more persuasive than eloquence. He wasn't just carving a path for himself, he was shaping Rome's future identity, challenging notions of leadership with each triumph, and setting the stage for a collision with the old guard. The labyrinth of Roman politics was a treacherous arena, distinct from the clarity of combat Pompey knew so well. Relationships were as fragile as the Republic itself. Aligning with Sulla was a strategic decision, a master's play that ensured survival amid political tumult. Sulla, equal parts reformer and tyrant, slew Marius's followers to claim Rome for his own. Pompey's choice wasn't mere allegiance, but a deft observation of strength and a promise of loyalty that outlasted his father's reputation for betrayal. Guided by these finely tuned alliances, Pompey manoeuvred through Rome's shifting power sands, with grace befitting a dance at the edge of a blade. He married strategically and built alliances not just for support, but to fortify his place in an empire wary of his rise. Despite wariness from the Senate, his adept navigation of the political jungle quelled challenges that would have toppled lesser men. Pompey's star continued to ascend as allies and enemies watched with cautious interest. His ambitions too grand for ancient Rome's constricting boundaries. The drive for glory coursed through Pompey's veins, pushing him beyond mortal limits. Each victory expanded Rome's reach and brought him new territories. His gaze rarely faltered, ever scanning the horizon for the next conquest. His deeds elevated him but also strained the fragile networks that sustained him, posing an existential rivalry to anyone opposing his vision. The shadow of legendary conquerors beckoned him, untouchable figures like Alexander the Great. Yet with each conquest, Pompey strode further from cooperative politics, inflaming suspicions among those wary that his dreams might lead Rome to ruin. Newly acquired lands and treasures didn't just magnify Pompey's fame, but altered the very fabric of Roman life. Prosperity surged, while divides widened between the privileged and the impoverished. The riches of war were a double-edged sword, weaving complexities into the Republic's identity. As Rome grew intoxicated on its newfound wealth, ancient austerity slipped further from the everyday, while class tensions simmered beneath its polished veneer. In these victories, Pompey not only redefined Rome's place on the world stage, but challenged the Senate's stoic traditions. Their admiration mingled with distrust, yielding a tense alliance where power shifts were driven by his enduring influence. The Senate learned to accommodate their fears of a potential tyrant, recognizing in Pompey a man whose ambition rivaled their own. Pompey, no longer simply a rising star, stood at history's crossroads, observing a republic on the cusp of transformation. Embarking on a path where glory beckoned alongside danger, his choices influenced Rome's fate. He saw an opportunity, or perhaps a necessity, to shape an empire with echoes that rippled into the annals of time. Pompey's rise is the story of a leader shaped by both triumph and loss, his youthful zeal, immortalized on Rome's storied earth, forever etched in their evolving legend. The streets of Rome had never seen a spectacle quite like this. Pompey, the young conqueror, returned from his campaigns in Sicily and Africa, not as some seasoned senator or magistrate, but as a hero crafted from the very stuff of myth. His feats were sung across the marketplaces, whispered in the narrow lanes, drawing every eye toward his impending arrival. Here was a man who had never held elected office, yet demanded a triumph. It was an audacious challenge to Roman tradition, where only those entrenched in the political arena could claim such a parade of victory. The Senate faced a dilemma, caught between their rigid principles and the tide of Pompey's rising fame. His exploits demanded recognition, a force too potent to ignore, even for the most stalwart defenders of the old guard. Despite their misgivings, the senators yielded, allowing Pompey his unprecedented triumph. This decision revealed a profound shift within the Republic, hinting at a world where sheer military prowess risked overshadowing political legitimacy. On the appointed day, Rome erupted into vivid celebration, streets thronged with citizens eager for a glimpse of their daring hero. The air pulsed with energy, echoing with the rhythmic beats of drums and the clatter of chariots. Amid this orchestrated chaos, Pompey shone in his toga picta, the deep purples and glinting gold, transforming him into a figure of almost divine stature. Yet, the triumph was more than a display of personal victory. Each treasure-laden cart and captive showcased the riches and power Pompey had secured for Rome, cementing his status as a protector and benefactor unlike any other. While the throngs cheered within the Senate walls, unease brewed. The triumph had set a precedent, flinging open doors for future commanders to seize recognition through military might alone. Pompey's feat painted him as more than a soldier. It forged him into a cultural icon, blending Rome's legendary past with a now visible future. His ascendancy marked a cultural shift where gladiatorial splendour and personal charisma began to rival the traditional virtues of Roman statesmanship. Yet for all the public's adoration, deeper currents swirled within Pompey's ambitions. His triumph was more than a conquest over foreign lands. It signified a strategic positioning within Rome's tangled web of power. Standing tall upon his chariot, flanked by loyal veterans, his eyes were set on a political horizon far grander than mere military acclaim. This display was a subtle yet powerful reshaping of Roman politics, where personal allure began trumpeting over established order. As the procession wound its way through the jubilant crowds, the Senate's unease reflected a broader anxiety over the Republic's fragility. Wealth, bountiful and unrestrained, poured from Pompey's triumph, fostering public works and strengthening Rome's economic stature. Yet, it was this very wealth that granted Pompey an unprecedented influence, posing a threat to the delicate balance of Roman power. Pompey's triumph turned him into a near-mythic figure, his economic command bolstering his popular appeal. The recognition bestowed upon Pompey, a private citizen, set new standards, challenging the Republic's notions of authority. Legitimacy now had competitors in valour and charisma, reshaping debates around power and its rightful holders. It was a shift that ventured beyond Rome's walls, stirring ambitions among many who yearned to follow Pompey's path. Among these was Julius Caesar, who would soon leverage such strategies to alter Rome's destiny profoundly. In the triumph's glow, Rome's citizens revelled in tales of valour and prophecy fulfilled, while the Senate reflected on the spectre of military dominance. Pompey's ascent was a triumph of the extraordinary over the conventional. The Romans, with laurels in their hands and cheers in their throats, saw more than a soldier. They saw the embodiment of Rome's grandeur and aspirations. This complex interplay between public passion and political anxiety foreshadowed struggles yet to come, where military ambition constantly tested the Republic's core values. Pompey's triumph was both a symbol and a harbinger. It stirred the pot of Roman politics, inviting debates that would echo for generations. Culturally, it infused the air with dreams of individual ascension and tales of untethered glory. Legally, it prodded lawmakers to question and redraft their understanding of power. And at its heart was Pompey, standing at the edge of legend and reality, setting a stage rich with possibility and paving the way for the unforgiving tides of change. His triumph wasn't merely a victory march, it was the overture to Rome's transformation, where individual ambition began seeding the eventual decline of a storied republic. In the early 1st century BCE, the Mediterranean was a lawless expanse roamed by pirates who struck fear into the heart of Rome. These bandits, more than mere opportunists, wielded terrifying power over trade routes crucial for Rome's survival. Cities and islands bowing under their rule became bleak havens, where captured Romans faced either ransom or slavery as their grim fate. The waters, meant to be pathways of prosperity, were now corridors of dread, where the spectre of piracy shadowed every ship. The threat these pirates posed was not merely about stolen goods, it was about a nation's survival hinging on a precarious thread. Rome, dependent on grain from Egypt and Sicily, found its lifeline severed. Bread prices shot up as anxiety rippled through the populace from patricians to plebeians. The murmurs of unrest began to echo louder in the forums. A saviour was desperately summoned, one who could steer Rome away from this maritime chaos. The Senate, apprehensive yet resolute, turned to Pompey the Great, a man whose rising star seemed destined for this challenge. With the Lex Gabinia enacted in 67 BCE, Pompey was granted unprecedented naval command, a decree that cloaked him with authority spanning seas and lands up to 50 miles inland, a gesture as groundbreaking as it was controversial. Many in the Senate, wary of concentrating such power in one man's hands, worried about the shadow it cast on republican virtues, fearing the slope to autocracy. Yet Rome stood at the brink, and practicality triumphed over political caution. Pompey's strategic genius unfolded with the precision of an artist painting on the vast canvas of the sea. Leveraging a formidable fleet of over 500 ships and 120,000 men, he transformed chaos into order. Each squadron had a purpose, and together they wove a net of ships that spread across the Mediterranean like a storm. Pompey's masterstroke was not merely in military might, but in psychological warfare. His forces severed pirate communication lines and besotted them with sheer speed and confusion. A living tempest that stoked legend and fear alike. The fierceness of his maritime blitzkrieg was measured not just by battles won, but by the hearts captured. Pompey offered clemency to those who surrendered, embracing them into the Republic's fold rather than casting them aside. This nuanced strategy not only weakened the pirates' resolve, but fortified the ranks with those who once opposed him. Foes now allies under Rome. In 3 months, Pompey achieved what seemed impossible. The Mediterranean, once a playground for brigands, was now a testament to Roman dominance. Temples extolled his name, offering sacrifices to both gods and Pompey himself, entwining his legacy with divine favour. His likeness adorned statues across the city as poets immortalised his deeds. The glorification, however, wasn't without its curse. Pompey's ascent stirred apprehension among the Senate, casting a long shadow over his triumph. Was he a destined reformer, or the spectre of tyranny? His transformation from general to quasi-god enticed grand aspirations, but also spawned whispers of unease. For Pompey, these divine laurels were heavy, fraught with expectations that could sour public adulation into rebellion should he misstep. Rome's economy flourished anew, freed from piratical shackles. Trade bloomed as Mediterranean routes brimmed with goods flowing from across 3 continents. The fear of famine dissipated as grain from Egypt and Sicily arrived unobstructed, stabilising markets and society at large. Rome basked in prosperity's warm embrace. Pompey's name was etched into communal gratitude. Amidst this splendour, Pompey's softer tactics resonated. He wielded power with moderation and effectively merged force with diplomacy. Former pirates, once enemies, were now steadfast supporters, sagacious enough to recognise Pompey's benevolence, not as weakness but as a shrewd extension of his strategic acumen. Such diplomacy elevated Pompey's stature beyond that of conqueror. He was a statesman who saw beyond victory's bloodstains. Yet, change loomed on the political horizon. Within the Senate, murmurs of Pompey's influence sparked trepidation. His amassed power challenged the Senate, igniting debates over Rome's future and heralding fears of one man's glory eclipsing republican tenets. These political undercurrents began to churn, unknown to many but visible in the tensions steadily streaming through Rome's halls of power. Meanwhile, as the legend of Pompey stretched its shadow, Julius Caesar quietly emerged, a burgeoning rival. The delicate alliance between Pompey and Caesar, initially one of practical governance, slowly unravelled under the weight of personal ambition and conflicting goals. Their tense partnership portended a clash as imminent as a gathering storm, threatening not just personal downfall, but the entire Roman Republic. As Pompey's star soared, the sky darkened with the thunderous promise of upheaval. Rome stood on the precipice of a transformative rivalry, its fate balancing precariously between these two ambitious titans. Together and apart, Pompey and Caesar would steer the future, redefining the Republic's destiny with each daring maneuver, their conflict forever altering the course of history. Pompey stood at the precipice of the known world, with his legions poised to descend upon the east, a sprawling land beyond the Roman imagination. This wasn't just a military campaign, it was an odyssey into a world drenched in myths and legends. For every step his soldiers took beyond the Mediterranean's familiar shores, they were unravelling a tapestry of empires rich in silk bazaars, incense-laden streets, and artisans whose skills surpassed even the most ambitious Roman dreams. The East, with its meld of cultures and traditions, offered not just strategic victories, but an expansion of Pompey's burgeoning legend across foreign lands. As he moved from city to city, Pompey wasn't merely a conqueror, he became an explorer of the unknown, unveiling the mysteries woven into the streets and temples of ancient civilizations. His entry into these cities was less about crushing defiance with iron, and more about blending diplomacy with sheer military might, as rulers often capitulated, captivated by either admiration for or fear of Rome's irresistible charm. This was a conquest won by both blade and handshake, diplomacy a silent partner to his martial prowess, securing Rome's position through balance and intimidation. In Syria, Pompey demonstrated a strategic genius that balanced brute strength with calculated governance. Scaling the power-laden structures of a region brimming with history and unrest, he understood that fortification was only half the battle. He needed to entwine Roman authority with local autonomy. The fertile lands of Syria soon hummed with productivity under Pompey's watch, a crucial cog in the grand machinery of Roman economic expansion. To his senatorial peers, Pompey's triumph in Syria was more than just territorial. It was an affirmation of his luminary status as both hero and statesman. Judea posed its own labyrinthine dilemmas. Entering this land where ancient customs intermingled with political discord, Pompey found a kingdom in the throes of internal strife. Navigating the tense rivalry between Hyrcanus II and Aristobulus II, he adeptly exploited his role as an arbiter, favouring Hyrcanus for his malleability. His siege of Jerusalem marked a pivotal turn. He breached the sacred confines of the Holy of Holies in the Second Temple, yet refrained from plundering, balancing conquest with a touch of reverence, thereby easing the burdens of subjugation under Roman rule. Pompey's ambition carried him further east, with the unknown allure of the Caspian Sea capturing his imagination. This journey echoed the legendary exploits of Alexander the Great, promising not just immediate spoils, but the grandeur of expanded frontiers. The territories by the Caspian were less bounteous in immediate wealth, but brimmed with the promise of expanded influence, a testament to Rome's insatiable desire for power. There, amidst mountain tribes, Pompey's influence crescendoed. He planted the seeds of Roman culture, from amphitheatres to bathhouses, a statement that Rome's presence was absolute and enduring. Pompey's campaigns didn't merely fill Rome's coffers, they transformed its economy. The parade of Eastern riches into Rome symbolised not just wealth, but an assertion of power that eclipsed mere financial gain, fostering both admiration and fear. His success was stitched into Rome's very fabric, reshaping alliances and fueling populist causes, while sparking envy and discord among the elite, used to the delicate balance of republican traditions. Each triumphal march under Rome's arches was a reminder of his unmatched saga, casting echoes of suspicion among senators wary of a potential usurper. The infusion of Hellenistic culture into Rome became a legacy of Pompey's expeditions, as Roman soldiers returned with tales of philosophies and art forms encountered in the East. Rome's own culture began to evolve. Pompey recognised that these newly absorbed Eastern philosophies could enrich Roman society, nurturing the Republic with an intellectual elegance. This melding of cultures accentuated Rome's new role as a beacon of breadth and sophistication, symbolising evolving power that transcended brute force alone. Navigating the politics of Eastern kings, Pompey played a game as dangerous as war itself, blending diplomacy with coercion. Kings accustomed to power plays found in Pompey a figure both commanding and strategic. Understanding the currents of allegiance, he brokered alliances while exploiting regional tensions. This adeptness in political chess not only secured Roman dominance, but wove a mesh of relations that ensured client states stood as bulwarks against threats like the formidable Parthian Empire. His victories abroad stirred contrasting emotions in the Roman Senate, where admiration clashed with fear. Whispered comparisons to Alexander the Great, a spectre of absolute power, painted Pompey as both hero and potential despot. Within the triumphs lay an unsettling question. Was this Rome's glory, or Pompey's alone? The spectre of his ascent threatened to overshadow the fragile constructs of republic. His burgeoning popularity among Romans only amplified senatorial anxieties. Pompey's undeniable aura of popularity lay paradoxically both as his greatest strength and potential downfall. The Roman populace, enraptured by his accomplishments, celebrated him as a benefactor of unparalleled largesse. Yet the more his legend grew, the sharper the senatorial daggers became, poised beneath the veneer of adulation. Even as he basked in his hard-earned glory, seeds of inevitable discord with Caesar were sprouting, a narrative of ambition and rivalry, foretelling a storm that would shake the Republic to its very foundations. In the mid-1st century BCE, Rome was a cauldron of political intrigue and social unrest, as its sprawling territories strained the city's ancient republican framework. Amidst this turmoil, three colossal figures emerged: Pompey, Crassus, and Caesar. Each commanded power and influence, wielding their military might and personal fortunes like weapons. Yet, rather than clashing in a destructive conflict, they forged a precarious alliance, the First Triumvirate. This shadowy pact was a response to the Republic's inefficiencies and the Senate's blatant corruption. It was never a product of mutual affection, but rather a strategic necessity. Caesar brought charisma and the people's favour. Crassus supplied immense wealth and Pompey offered unmatched military glory. Together they bypassed the Senate's sluggish bureaucracy, aiming to grasp political control while fulfilling individual ambitions. Conversations in dimly lit rooms replaced senatorial debates as the triumvirs navigated their uneasy coexistence. Pompey solidified his bond with Caesar by marrying his daughter Julia. This was more than a mere union. It was a political gambit meant to entwine their fates. Julia's charm and intelligence provided a much-needed buffer against internal strife. Caesar stood as a beacon of ambition, keen to carve his name into Rome's very foundations. His campaigns in Spain merely hinted at his potential, but it was the consulship he eyed, and Gaul presented the opportunity. It promised not just military command, but also a chance to solidify loyalty among his legions, men who would later march with him against Rome itself. Caesar was a favourite of the plebeians, cementing his status as a populist hero, while shaking the foundations of the Republic with promises of reform. Crassus, meanwhile, understood that wealth and influence held sway over brute force. Master manipulator of Rome's economy, he underpinned the triumvirate with financial heft, fueling Caesar's conquests and Pompey's public projects. His yearning for glory led him on a perilous journey to Parthia, seeking martial distinction equal to his counterparts, a journey that ended in disaster and death, highlighting the fragility of power built on economic might alone. Pompey, hailed as a military genius, navigated the shifting sands of Roman politics with an eye on his legacy. His successful campaigns, from removing Mediterranean pirates to facilitating eastern expansions, cemented his reputation. For Pompey, the alliance offered means to secure veteran settlements and pet projects, aligning his interest with the triumvirate's broader objectives. Yet, beneath the surface, fear of betrayal simmered, a tension not entirely soothed by Julia's presence. As superstition weaved through Roman life, the alliance did not escape the influence of prophetic whispers. An enigmatic soothsayer's prediction about an emperor rising from the Republic's ashes echoed through their decisions, a narrative thread binding reason and ritual, guiding choices made in palace shadows and open forums. The triumvirate, in essence, performed a delicate ballet of policy and patronage, operating not in opposition to the Senate, but in a realm above it. They utilised patronage systems, making relationships sway over political outcomes, a Roman landscape where alliances were fluid, determined by personal gain more than collective vision. As Caesar's triumphs in Gaul mounted, so did Pompey's wariness, prompting him to consolidate power closer to home. Crassus, ever vigilant, managed the economic undercurrents, ensuring no man tightened his grasp too firmly upon the others. Within the Senate's marble chambers, the triumvirate's rise rattled the senators, their grip on power loosened, undercut by a trio that ignored traditional pathways. The Senate, caught in this turbulent shift, experimented with strategies ranging from covert defiance to reluctant cooperation, hoping to restore their waning authority. It was evident that despite feeling increasingly powerless, their commitment to republican ideals rendered them unwilling to surrender control entirely. Julia, nestled in this web of power, served as both a bridge and a keystone, a personal tie that maintained peace between her husband and father. Beloved for her gentle influence over Pompey, she epitomised the strength of familial alliances woven into political fabrics. Her premature death marked the beginning of the end for the triumvirate, unravelling the threads of unity and releasing dormant rivalries. In the aftermath of Julia's loss and Crassus's calamitous end, the triumvirate crumbled, giving way to conflict. With the emotional and financial keystones gone, Pompey and Caesar, once brothers in arm, stood on opposing sides. Rome, a city balancing on the knife edge of transformation, staggered towards its fate, a future where ambition and betrayal heralded an age of emperors, forged in civil war. The stage was set for an epic clash. Friends turned foes with the soul of the Republic hanging in the balance. In the bustling heart of Rome, where politics often dictated the rhythm of life, Julia, the daughter of Julius Caesar and wife to Pompey, emerged as more than a mere pawn in the intricate dance of power. Her marriage to Pompey initially served as a strategic alliance, carefully crafted to bind Caesar and Pompey together. Yet, over time, this union blossomed beyond political machinations, becoming a genuine bond of affection amidst a backdrop of ambition and rivalry. Julia was revered not only for her noble lineage, but also for her ability to temper the ambitions of two powerful men. Her gentle influence provided a rare bridge between figures, otherwise poised for confrontation, cementing their connection with ties of personal loyalty often absent from the brutal calculus of Roman power. Yet Julia's life, interwoven with the grandeur of Rome's elite, was fraught with the undercurrents of political speculation. Her marriage symbolised not just a familial link, but a script in the grand play of Roman politics, where genuine affection masked the inherent tensions. But Julia herself was neither a dominant force nor merely a spectator. She was the emotional heart that softened the iron will of power, painting the vast stone halls of Roman intrigue with flecks of humanity. The serene balance she brought was shattered by tragedy when Julia died during childbirth. Her passing was not just a personal loss for Pompey, who openly grieved despite his stature, but also a seismic shift in the fragile political tapestry of Rome. The death of this young maiden brought with it not just sorrow for the child who never breathed the air of the Mediterranean, but also a harbinger of the alliance's disintegration. The ripple effects extended far beyond personal grieving to the very core of the Republic's political alliances. For Caesar, Julia's absence marked a profound fracture, untethering the personal ties that once tempered his ambitions. The emotional void left by her death carved into the alliance a fissure that legal bonds and military pacts could not mend. What had been a formidable alliance now appeared vulnerable. Pompey's sorrow echoed through the Senate, serving as a stark reminder to all of the fragility of life and political bonds. As all this unfolded, another pillar of the triumvirate, the immensely wealthy. Crassus embarked on his ill-fated campaign in Parthia, driven by the insatiable lust for glory and fortune. His ventures were disastrously misguided, marked by hubris and missteps that led to a tragic downfall. The defeat and death of Crassus in the unforgiving desert sands echoed through Rome, transforming the once sturdy alliance into a precarious balance between Caesar and Pompey. Without Crassus, the counterbalance that restrained both men dissolved, skewing the delicate power dynamics towards an inevitable clash. In the face of these losses, Pompey sought refuge not in Caesar's companionship, but in the waning structure of the Senate, a body desperate to stem the tidal wave of political chaos. Here, Pompey attempted to bind military prowess with the veneer of law, becoming a symbol of the Republic's embattled ideals. Despite a public show of renewed purpose, Pompey found himself caught in intricately woven conspiracies, as the Senate buckled under its own fragmented loyalties. Meanwhile, Caesar viewed the Roman Republic not as an institution to be preserved, but as an opportunity for expansive ambition. His successes in Gaul swelled his resolve and laid bare a vision of Rome unshackled from its ancient limitations. The whispers of his intentions grew louder, casting a shadow over the political landscape as he stood poised to transcend the Republic's boundaries. Tensions rose as Rome's political realm speculated about Caesar's next move with increasing anxiety. The Senate, now aligned with Pompey, braced for Caesar's perceived defiance, poised nervously around the Rubicon, a symbol of war and defiance. While Pompey sought peace, the gravity of the situation demanded reckoning with Caesar's overwhelming ambition. As turmoil mounted, Pompey was thrust into the heart of these tensions, torn between Senate allegiance and public sentiment, the latter increasingly swayed by Caesar's reformist image. Caught between the ideals of a dying republic and pragmatic realities, Pompey faced an impossible choice that defined his role both as a leader and protector of Rome's legacy. The threat of war murmured softly throughout Rome, promising to transform tensions into open conflict. Caesar and Pompey, once allies through familial ties, now stood opposed in a deadly game of ambitions on the cusp of eruption. Rome itself grew restless, with public opinion swinging unpredictably, the tide of allegiance shifting between Caesar's charisma and Pompey's storied past. In those tense moments, amidst a foreboding silence, Pompey navigated the uncertain waters of strategy and power. Rome, wrapped in anticipation, awaited a storm that would irrevocably reshape its destiny. In this brooding calm, Pompey and Rome itself stood at a crossroads, on the brink of a transformation that promised to bind them to a new era, a dawning empire stepping from the shadows of a republic. As the year 49 BCE unfolded, Rome was tense with anticipation, the city buzzing with rumours like a beehive on the verge of swarming. In the Senate, whispers grew louder as alliances shifted with the winds of opportunity. Julius Caesar, a man known for his ambition, had extended his campaigns in Gaul beyond his original mandate, seeking not just to conquer land, but to amass unprecedented power. Meanwhile, Pompey, once a close ally, viewed Caesar with growing suspicion. The Senate, sensing a threat to their fragile balance of power, declared Caesar a public enemy. In the bustling markets and crowded forums, Romans felt the tremors of impending upheaval, barely concealed beneath their everyday lives. This wasn't merely political maneuvering they witnessed, it was a silent struggle for survival, as everyone from merchants to senators grappled with the shifting bedrock of Roman society. Standing at the banks of the Rubicon, Caesar contemplated a fateful decision. This modest river in northern Italy had become a symbol of irrevocable choice. To cross it was to defy the Senate, to break the sacred laws of Rome, and to set ablaze the beacon of rebellion. For Caesar, retreat meant political ruin, a future shrouded in the shadow of his enemies' machinations. As dawn's mist hung low over the river, Caesar's resolve steeled. His legions, veterans who had fought 100 battles by his side, now bore witness to the defining moment of their commander's career. His declaration, "Alea iacta est," or "the die is cast," echoed the resolve of a man who had cast his lot with destiny. The Rubicon, an unassuming stream, now delineated the boundary between an era past and a turbulent future. With his legions marching, Caesar's progression toward Rome was more than a simple advance. It was a display of power meant to inspire awe and fear. Village after village, city after city, saw the disciplined grace of Caesar's battle-hardened troops. Chandler corps, cloaked in ambition, deftly directed their march. Opposing forces crumbled, choosing either to capitulate or join the rising tide. Caesar's reputation alone was enough to sway the uncertain, his presence promising a shift in allegiance and a dawn of transformation. The spectre of Pompey's past victories loomed over this march, but with each step, Caesar eroded the long-standing power structures of Rome. This was not insubordination, but a strategic battle for the soul of a city mired in its own corruption. As news of Caesar's approach swept through Rome, panic took hold. Citizens across the social spectrum, from patricians in opulent chambers to plebeians on bustling streets, grappled with the spectre of civil war. Chaos reigned as homes became sanctuaries and families whispered frantic plans of escape. As the political elite stood at a crossroads, divided loyalties became a matter of life and death. Some renowned figures, sensing the winds of change, aligned with Caesar, while traditionalists clung to Pompey's ideals. The Senate, a stage for debate, now echoed with desperation-driven rhetoric. As every hour passed, the unity of Rome splintered, and its citizens, once united under a blazing sun, questioned what it truly meant to be Roman in an era defined anew by Caesar's ambitions. Pompey, reacting to the chaos, made a strategic retreat to Greece. This move was not driven by cowardice but by tactical brilliance, allowing him to regroup and draw strength from Eastern allies. By leaving Italy, Pompey transformed the landscape into a battlefield of his choosing, confident he could dictate the tempo of the war. It was a calculated gamble. Time might weaken Caesar's immediate influence, granting Pompey the chance to gather his scattered forces. This retreat lured Caesar onto unfamiliar terrain, shifting the locus of conflict and revealing a broader chess-like strategy in Pompey's mind, his ultimate play to reclaim Rome. Amidst this clamour, soldiers who marched beneath the banners of Caesar or Pompey faced a test of loyalty. Their choices transcended camaraderie or compensation. Allegiances were questioned, as conviction and opportunism moulded the army's fate. Many soldiers weren't bound to factions, but to the men they followed: Caesar with his magnetic promises, or Pompey's legacy of mythic conquest. Yet, with this talk of fortune came a darker undercurrent of betrayal and shifting allegiance. In this turbulent era, those who chose unwisely did so at risks of honour and life, casting their lots in the sands of an uncertain future. As Rome stood on the precipice, the public grappled with fear and hope. Citizens pondered which leader, Caesar, the disruptor promising change, or Pompey, defender of a storied republic, truly offered the greater promise of stability. This divide echoed in every corner of daily life, reshaping relationships, even as the tides of war threatened Rome's stability, leaving its people adrift on a sea of moral dilemmas. In the midst of yet another conflict, narratives became as influential as armies. Caesar and Pompey utilized propaganda, each shaping the public will through decree, inscription, and tale. The populace consumed these stories, with scribes colouring reality to sway minds. Historians crafted legends that carried through the ages, either venerating or vilifying these great figures. Thus, Rome plunged into the future, torn by the shadows of the past, writing history with each stroke, both with the quill and the sword, forever changed by the Rubicon's crossing. As tension gripped the ancient world, Caesar and Pompey stood on the brink of a battle that would decide the fate of Rome itself. Caesar, seasoned from his campaigns in Gaul, commanded an army fiercely loyal, their allegiance forged in battles fought shoulder to shoulder. Pompey's army, larger yet hastily gathered, showed signs of fragility, with loyalty stretched thin over superior numbers. In the heart of Greece, once serene fields were now arenas of strategy, where history's weight pressed heavily upon the two generals poring over their maps, each preparing for a conflict that was as much about ideologies as it was about swords. Caesar's gambit was as bold as it was precarious, a defining trait that beckoned disaster yet led to triumph. Pompey, burdened by the weight of countless victories, now faced an underestimated adversary who had become his peer. As the air thickened with anticipation, armies were poised for battle, and the generals endured the isolation that precedes the storm. Each soldier, a cog in the grand chessboard of fate, clutched charms and offered prayers to Mars in hopes of surviving the chaos to come. What lay ahead was more than a battle. It was a crucible for Rome's soul. Caesar's strategy hinged on the dexterity of his veterans and his own knack for adaptive tactics. Though outnumbered, his men marched with purpose, their cohesion a testament to rigorous discipline. He cleverly hid a cohort of cavalry behind his infantry, anticipating Pompey's overconfident front-line assault. The terrain served as Caesar's silent co-conspirator, helping him lay traps that would turn Pompey's predictable maneuvers into glaring vulnerabilities. Pompey, relying on numbers and conventional strategies, was soon to find that brute force was no match for ingenuity. His static formation prepared for a slow, grinding victory, undercut by his opponent's restless dynamism. As dawn's light crept over the dusty Greek fields, the order was given, and legions advanced in calculated precision. Caesar's army, well practiced and fired by their commander's rallying words, moved as a single entity, a living demonstration of disciplined power. Pompey's forces initially held sway, their confidence bolstered by numerical superiority. Yet, just as predictably, his cavalry made their charge, only to be met unexpectedly by Caesar's hidden counterattack. Caesar, revealing layer upon layer of stratagem, tightened the snare around Pompey's forces. The echo of battle, metal on metal, cries of valiant men, was a deafening testament to the human cost of ambition. Despite initial successes, Pompey watched his advantage slip away with a painful clarity. His belief in the unassailable might of his cavalry crumbled under an unexpected onslaught. Panic surged, and discipline fragmented as Caesar's men pressed their attack, wielding fortune like a sword honed in chaos. As cracks spread through his ranks, Pompey's hesitancy cost him dearly, turning tactical patience into doom-laden inertia. His adversary's instincts and daring maneuvers underscored the chasm between their plans. Seeds of doubt blooming into desperation marked the fall of Pompey's once formidable force, now flailing under pressure. As Pompey ordered a retreat, the illusion of control shattered completely. His army, once a bulwark of confidence, was now a whirl of confusion and defeat. With options dwindling, Pompey withdrew in haste, abandoning the field that had become more grave than glory. His departure, a silhouette of resignation against a backdrop of despair, symbolized more than a failed strategy. It was the embodiment of fallen hopes and the crushing weight of unmet expectations. In the aftermath, Caesar's victory echoed as both celebration and cautionary tale. His soldiers, tempered by victory yet wary of future challenges, recognized their hand in shaping history. The battlefield, scarred by struggle, whispered with pride and forewarning in equal measure. Rome trembled as news spread, the permanence of Caesar's triumph, disrupting the traditional order and heralding potential transformation, fraught with both fear and admiration. Meanwhile, Caesar, alone in silent contemplation, grappled with the duality of triumphant command. He pondered Pompey's errors and the fragile line between noble ambition and perilous hubris. This victory, a testament to both strategic brilliance and ruthless pragmatism, left Caesar pondering Rome's future under his shadow. Aware of the delicate balance between revered leader and feared tyrant, he envisioned not just his destiny, but that of Rome itself, a place poised for transformation under an unyielding ruler's hand. Exiled, Pompey drifted through the desolate landscape of defeat. The once mighty general now navigated the shadows, consumed by the fallen grandeur of past glories. His reflections haunted by companions lost and opportunities squandered, he lingered as a spectre of what could have been, struggling against the relentless march of time and fate. In the corridors of Roman power, the impact of Pharsalus reverberated with volcanic intensity. Senators, caught between shock and reluctant awe, questioned their allegiances as whispers of change stirred social discourse. Uncertainty loomed as Rome, a city long rooted in tradition, faced the dawning of a new epoch carved by Caesar's audacious hands. Finally, as the dust of Pharsalus settled, Caesar stood, a visionary sculpting the future from the remnants of an aged republic. His path forward was clear, his legacy indisputable. The echoes of this battle would fuel Rome's transformation, a future rebuilt on Caesar's ambitions, and Rome's ancestral grandeur blended into an enduring narrative of empire. In 48 BCE, as Pompey sailed across the Mediterranean, his world unravelled. Once a man whose name evoked military brilliance and Roman majesty, he was now a vanquished general. The haunting silence of the sea reflected his shattered hopes after Pharsalus, where Caesar decisively crushed his forces. With few options left, Pompey, like a ghostly remnant of Roman glory, approached Egypt. His heart clung to the sliver of hope that Ptolemy, the 13th's court, would offer him asylum, a chance to rally and reclaim his lost honour. However, Egypt was embroiled in its own internal strife. A young king and his sister Cleopatra vied for control, their rivalry mirroring the very tumult Pompey hoped to escape. The shores of Alexandria loomed not as a safe haven, but as a foreboding chessboard of political motives, ready to ensnare the once great leader in a web of treachery. The Egyptian court, caught in the crosshairs of their internal struggle, saw Pompey's arrival through the lens of cold pragmatism. Ptolemy's advisors weighed the advantages of aligning with Caesar, Rome's rising star, against the risks of harbouring a war-torn rival. They deemed it wiser to make a sacrificial offering of Pompey, to curry favour with the man poised to become Rome's master. As his vessel neared the sandy grasp of Egypt's coast, Pompey, had he known the court's duplicitous intentions, might have trusted the mercy of the sea once more. Instead, he ventured towards Alexandria, unaware that this would be the setting for his tragic finale. On the morning of September 28th, 48 BCE, Pompey arrived in Egypt, his hopes cautiously stirred by the prospects of an alliance. Yet, what greeted him was not the warm welcome of allies, but the cold silence of betrayal. A small entourage, including former Roman soldiers, Lucius, Septimius, and Achillas, awaited him. Naively trusting in an old soldier's honour, Pompey stepped off his ship and into what he believed would be an audience with the king. His trust, however, was misplaced. As the small craft drifted from his previously loyal men, the realization of betrayal unfurled too slow to save him. A cowardly strike from behind ended his life in ignominy, a stark contrast to the battlefield deaths that had often framed Roman glory. His end whispered a lesson as old as war itself. betrayal, unsated by bloodlines or titles, knows no boundaries. The Egyptians, believing their grim offering would please Caesar, sent Pompey's severed head as a token of allegiance. Within Alexandria's opulent walls, amidst tapestries of ancient myth and political intrigue, they expected gratitude from the Roman leader. However, Caesar, upon receiving this macabre prize, reacted with grim sorrow. The head of Pompey represented not just the loss of a rival, but also of a respected figure who had once been an ally and personal link to Rome's storied past. Tears intermixed with the responsibilities of rule, as Caesar recognised the severed head as a symbol of a republic drunk on its tragedies and betrayals. The news of Pompey's death rippled swiftly through Rome, reverberating with the tale of a fallen colossus whose shadow had once sprawled across continents. The Senate and Roman public alike were shaken, for Pompey was more than a general. He embodied an epoch of ambition and expansion. His demise signalled a dark sea change, a harbinger of the storm yet to batter the heart of the Republic. Senators who had crossed wits with him recognised in his tragic end the precariousness of their own political games. Even as the tales of Egyptian treachery spread, a haunting realisation settled over Rome, that the principles binding the Republic were fraying, leaving it vulnerable to the tides of individual ambition. Caesar's displays of grief over Pompey's death served multiple purposes. Beyond personal mourning, they reinforced his image as a leader who placed the ideals of Rome above petty vendettas. His orders to bestow funeral honours upon Pompey caught many by surprise. Yet, they consolidated sympathy for Caesar, projecting an image of magnanimity entwined with strategic acumen that further deepened his grip on the Republic's future. In the aftermath, Pompey's family faced their own ordeal. Cornelia Metella, his intelligent and resilient wife, navigated the treacherous seas of Roman societal change alone, while Sextus Pompeius, their son, would eventually evoke his father's name in later conflicts. For Cornelia, safeguarding her family amidst shifting political sands became an immediate challenge, echoing the struggles of many Roman women whose fates were intricately tied to the churn of patriarchal politics. Within Alexandria, meanwhile, the echoes of Pompey's murder resonated amidst temples of learning and scholarly discourse. The city, famed for its intellectual vibrancy, stood at the crossroads of history and philosophy. Even as political schemes unfolded, its scholars remained engaged in unravelling the broader implications of history, providing a counterbalance to the militaristic legacy Pompey represented. Long after his final breath had been stolen by treachery, Pompey's legacy continued to cast a long shadow, intertwining his personal narrative with Rome's own transformation from republic to empire. His life, punctuated by boundless ambition and ultimate betrayal, served as a timeless tale, a warning etched into the annals of history. A reminder of how quickly power can fade, and how reputations once mighty can become mere lessons beneath the stirring sands of time. Pompey Magnus, famed as Pompey the Great, was a towering figure in Roman history, akin to legendary heroes like Alexander. More than a military genius, he embodied the last flicker of the Republic's greatness before its metamorphosis into an empire. As a young general, he was insatiable for glory, etching his mark deeply into Rome's chronicles through roles as varied as saviour, tyrant, hero and villain. He climbed to the zenith of power and wealth, rivaling the majesty of ancient monarchs. Yet as his ascent mirrored Rome's glory, his decline foreshadowed the fall of the Republic, where personal ambition and cutthroat rivalries usurped collective governance. During his heyday, Pompey expanded Rome's dominion with a transformative vision that stunned and seduced the masses. His military triumphs swayed popular sentiment, and he navigated the turbulent seas of Roman politics with the cunning of a master tactician. Yet beneath this tapestry of triumph lay a simmering internal conflict, a desperate hunger for validation, professed loyalty to the Republic, and gnawing insecurity as Caesar's influence loomed inexorably larger. Pompey straddled this precarious duality, a public figure consumed by an endless pursuit of honour, and a private man entrapped in a maelstrom of ambition and remorse. For all his accolades, Pompey's aspirations largely remained out of reach. His legacy is both a glorious ode and a melancholic testament to unfulfilled potential, forever sidelined by Caesar's audacity. As Caesar's star ascended, Pompey's once solid ground crumbled, and his prior achievements paled. Moments of humiliation, especially at Pharsalus, demanded a sober reflection on the mercurial nature of fortune in ancient Rome, a realm where dazzling victories swiftly surrendered to chaos and betrayal. Pompey's lifelong edifice, constructed painstakingly of glory, began to crack, revealing uncomfortable truths about how the destinies of men and nations are deeply intertwined, shaping history's relentless march. As a champion of the Senate, Pompey stood staunchly against Caesar's unbounded ambition. Yet, their relationship was marked by manipulations and conflicting agendas. Was Pompey a true ally, or merely a pawn in the Senate's desperate game to stave off change? This narrative of Pompey reflects the late Republic's broader struggle, a clash between senatorial traditions and the winds of imperial autocracy. As power shifted, Pompey's isolation grew, representing an idealistic defender of failing institutions. Burdened by mistrust and self-interest, his allegiances were tested as he seemed to straddle an allegiance to the Republic and a masked desire for the very power he ostensibly decried. Amidst grandeur and public accolades lay a personal life shadowed by tragedy. His alliance with Caesar, secured through marriage to Julia, dissolved upon her untimely death, snapping the personal bonds that once mediated their rivalry. Pompey's personal connections, tightly intertwined with public life, unravelled under political upheaval, turning ambition's fervent promise into a toll that exacted a heavy price on family and friendships. His life poignantly illustrates ambition's dual edge, where political success exacted deep personal sacrifices, a truth amplified against the rigid expectations of Roman public life, where personal fulfillment often bowed to political duty. As Rome trembled with the din of political upheaval and military marches, Pompey's alliances began to falter. Friends turned foes, and the Republic's factions changed loyalties with dizzying rapidity. In this seething milieu, Pompey's achievements started to wither against Caesar's meteoric rise. Old allies grew disenchanted, preferring the promise of Caesar's new order to Pompey's seasoned but stagnant tactics. This decline echoes Rome's own tumult, a civilization grappling with its proud legacy and the inexorable march into a redefined future. Even in decline, Pompey's physical legacy persisted. His architectural feats, such as the magnificent theatre complex bearing his name, stood as powerful reminders of his erstwhile influence. These monuments of marble became symbols of his enduring legacy amid shifting fortunes. Carved into Rome's terrain, they reflected not only his grandeur, but the impermanence of power, as they stood silent witness to the folks who lived, laughed, and loved around them long after his political might had faded. Over time, historians have endeavoured to capture Pompey's complexity through various lenses. crafting narratives that oscillate between heroism and villainy. Each interpretation reveals as much about its author as about Pompey, laying bare incessant themes of power and morality during turbulent times. His life, an intricate dance of resolve and vulnerability, yields vital insights into the enduring interplay of individual endeavour and sweeping historical forces. As narratives evolve, Pompey's story offers lessons on legacy and ambition that resonate across ages, a vivid portrayal of humanity's ceaseless power pursuit and the intrinsic, often hidden costs it extracts. The shadows of rivalry between Pompey and Caesar, two epic titans, defined an era's political landscape more than camaraderie ever could. Their alliance anchored an acute rivalry, embroiled with personal, philosophical, and political tensions at Rome's Republican twilight. Their machinations underscored truths about the fragility of trust and the relentless quest for absolute authority. As Pompey's narrative wraps into the evolving dialogue of history, it offers a mirror reflecting a tangled weave of power, ambitions, and the impact individuals imprint upon civilizations. Pompey's tale becomes a narrative of success and failure, a legacy revealing more about power's intoxicating influence than any mere mortal could convey alone. As history's pages turn, Pompey endures not just as a figure, but as an embodiment of eternal human struggles with glory and fate. His chronicle seamlessly weaves into Rome's grand tapestry. The spectral echoes of his legacy throw timeless truths into sharp relief, a vivid mosaic of glory underscored by progress and inevitability, ensuring his vibrant essence remains an insightful voice from antiquity. To continue exploring these absorbing stories, please like this video, subscribe, and stay tuned for more captivating tales from history.